Well, Ian Murray, Labour MP and former Shadow Scotland Secretary, described the comments as utterly irresponsible. He joins us live from central London. It seems that John McDonnell is simply saying that the people of Scotland should be given the decision themselves whether or not they want another second referendum. What's contentious about that?
Well, it's contentious for a number of reasons. One is it's not actually UK or Scottish Labour Party policy. Secondly, it flies in the face of our Scottish Labour leader, Richard Leonard, and what he said consistently since the start of this year, and indeed since conference in September last year. And we had an independence referendum in 2014, of which Scotland overwhelmingly voted to remain part of the United Kingdom. And if Nicola Sturgeon welcomes this, that maybe tells you all you need to know. John McDonnell should not be coming up to the festival, the comedy festival of all places, to do this, and making up policy on the cuff of major constitutional issues. And to describe the UK Parliament as the English Parliament just beggars belief.
The Labour Party does have something of a mountain to climb in Scotland. How helpful or otherwise are these comments?
Well, when you're trying to climb a mountain, what you best to do is to learn from your mistakes of the past. And what we didn't do in 2014, or indeed the general election in 2015, when we were all but wiped out in Scotland, was learn the lessons of the independence referendum. We've learnt those lessons. We've come to a very strong view that Scotland should be part of the United Kingdom. We justify that with a very positive case, but also a case in the sense that Brexit is going to be a disaster for the UK, and Scottish independence will be an even bigger disaster for Scotland to pile on that misery. So those are the reasons why we have a very strong policy. So we've got a mountain to climb. We have to have that strong policy, have that basic principle that we won't give in to nationalists who want to break up economic, social and cultural unions that are hugely successful and take the jobs and livelihoods away from our constituents. Those are the principles we should stand on, and that would be the principle that gets us back on the park, not coming up with policy on the hoof with mealy-mouthed speeches at comedy festivals where John McDonnell hasn't even clarified what he meant when he said those things yesterday.
Would you like clarification? Would you like him to apologise for them, to withdraw them?
Well, I'd like him to withdraw them and explain them, but I'd like him to apologise to Richard Leonard, the Scottish Labour Party leader, because he's been unequivocal in terms of his response to this particular issue when he said quite clearly that a future UK Labour manifesto, and indeed a Scottish Labour manifesto, would not contain support for a second independence referendum. That's written in stone in every referendum we've had and every election we've had since 2014, and John McDonnell should be abiding by that. John and Jeremy Corbyn have had this new move to make the Scottish Labour Party and the UK Labour Party very much democratised by its membership. So to change a huge constitutional policy on such a big issue like this on the hoof at a comedy festival seems quite strange. And indeed, I've been inundated with messages from Scottish Labour Party members today completely aghast that he would even do this. So an apology and an explanation, I think, would be wise.
Meanwhile, also, one of the reasons we want to talk to you today was that you're one of a group of politicians who started legal action trying to prevent Boris Johnson from shutting down Parliament to force through a no-deal Brexit. Why are you taking this action?
Well, a no-deal Brexit was never discussed at the 2016 EU referendum. The consequences of no deal are catastrophic. We see that from the government's own figures and every single credible analysis. And if the government now under Boris Johnson wants to close down Parliament to force a no deal Brexit, then we're petitioning the court to deem that both unconstitutional and illegal. Parliament has voted 3 times already to prevent a no deal Brexit. That is the view of Parliament by an overwhelming majority, and that should be respected by the government. And the new Prime Minister cannot come in, close down Parliament, close down our constitution and force through something that will have unequivalent economic harm to this country. That would be a disaster for the country's economy and very much a dereliction of duty of any Prime Minister.
But we spoke to Dominic Cummings, the Prime Minister's advisor, this morning, and he pointed out that politicians don't get to choose which votes they abide by. Boris Johnson is simply abiding by the vote across the UK, where 52% of people said they wanted to leave.
Yes, maybe leave the European Union, but nobody voted to leave with no deal. And I know that Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary...
Lots of people sorry to interrupt you, but lots of people who voted to leave will have voted to leave with no deal. I mean, I'll give you that people who voted to leave and remain had myriads of reasons for both of those things, but there will be a number of those who voted to leave that would be happy to leave with no deal.
Well, maybe we should go back to the people and ask them and let the people decide in the final say referendum if they wish to leave with no deal. The economic consequences of that would be catastrophic. We've heard from the Food and Drink Federation today that supermarkets are going to struggle with produce and fresh produce and having to stockpile food and medicines. That's not the kind of thing that anybody voted for. And for Dominic Cummings, who was the architect of the Leave campaign that not only broke all the rules but broke the law as well, then it would seem strange that we would listen to someone who's coming in to try and push through his ideological no deal, when in actual fact Parliament is the sovereign body. This is taking back control to Parliament, and Parliament, as representatives of the people, should be able to have a say on this, should have a vote on this, as we have done already. And for the Prime Minister to even consider closing it down, I think that's where the courts should step in, the courts being the arbiters of the people versus the government, and decide whether or not that is both illegal and unconstitutional for the government to even consider closing down Parliament to force through a no-deal Brexit.
OK, Ian Murray, thank you very much for joining us today.